Hello, entrepreneurs, and welcome to another episode of Mentors Collective. If you're a business owner, maybe you're starting to planning to start a business, or you're an entrepreneur looking for some help, you probably know, as well as I've learned, that talent in today's market is a rare commodity. It's hard to find, it's hard to keep them, it's hard to hold on to them. So where do you look? What do you do? Because really the foundation of building a company and growing and scaling your company is the people that you work with. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. So be sure to tune in, stay to the end. We're going to have some golden nuggets for you, some secrets that I've learned in my business to help you on your HR recruiting end. But as always, I bring in an expert that is going to have a conversation with me about this topic. I'm going to learn some stuff, and I know you are too. So without further ado, I really want to introduce a friend of mine, Alexandra McGroarty. She's the lead HR consultant and co-founder of McGroarty & Co., bringing vast experience in global HR, and she specializes in diversity and equity coaching, equity and inclusion, HR advisement. I hope I didn't butcher the last name. Tell me if I did, but welcome to the show. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much. You did quite well with it. Alex McGroarty, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you here, and thank you for spending some time. I know your time is obviously valuable with me to talk about this field that you specialize in that I know all business owners struggle with, because frankly, it's not something that is very easily accessible to learn, and hiring an HR and recruiting firm is a fortune.
Absolutely.
A fortune. So hopefully we can learn a few things to kind of do it yourself. And then, of course, there's always the way to fast track this, which is how to find the right specialist to work with.
Absolutely.
With that being said, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you became an expert in recruiting?
So I actually got my start in HR because I knew someone that I used to work with that transferred over to a new company, told me I would love it, come along. It's a great place to get your feet wet coming out of college. So I started at DaVita. DaVita is a Fortune 500 healthcare company as an HR coordinator. And I had the absolute best mentor there, Shelly Azen. She's actually a partner at this point in time at another firm on HR, and she taught me, I can't even quantify the amount of HR knowledge that she brought to me. And it really is what started my passion in HR. I love people. I'm a people person. I think we solve some of the most complex people issues when we work together, and it was a really great foundation. From there, I spent some time in the financial industry doing HR special projects in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and that's really where I got my feet wet in DE&I. And then I moved on to one of my last corporate roles at Clarivate. I was a VP of Global HR, oversaw about 40 countries of HR, and that was an eye-opening experience. Just getting to learn the different nuances and laws and regulations across the globe was an amazing experience. I had a great team. About 9 months ago now, my husband and I decided, hey, we're home for the pandemic. We always wanted to start our own business. Now is the time. We've seen each other 24/7 for 18 months. Let's go for it. And we did. And so we really knew that with everything going on in the pandemic, there was such a need for business consulting and HR consulting, and figured, let's go for it. So we did. And that's why we're here today.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you were able to have some success during this pandemic with the company. And I know this field is probably booming right now because we're going through something crazy in the job market.
Yep, the great resignation.
The great resignation. And I'd be doing the audience a massive disservice if we didn't spend a few minutes just talking about that, laying the groundwork. Where are we right now in the job market? What's going on?
Yeah, so I think over the pandemic, one, it forced everybody, almost everybody, except essential workers, home, right? So it gave you a lot of time to figure out what you wanted to do when you grew up. And folks got used to it. It was a better, sometimes harder work-life balance, but hey, you could take an hour here, you could take an hour there. You got to spend more time with the family. I, as a working mom, got to do school from home, so I understood that if I wasn't home, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so it really got folks thinking, do I want to go back to the office? Do I need to go back to the office full-time when my company calls me back? And a lot of times the answer is no. I've seen so many companies shift from you have to be here 4 to 5 days a week to work wherever you need to work as long as you're in the United States and we can tax you appropriately. And that's really something that a lot of people are looking for now. And so I do a lot of interviews during my time helping companies place roles. And one of the first questions candidates ask is, can I work from home? And if I have to go in, is it often? What does it look like? And I've had so many people say, I don't want a hybrid role. I don't want a role where I have to go back into the office. Thank you so much, but I'll either refer you to somebody else or let me know if you get something remote. So it's a really interesting landscape. I think we're coming off of the tails where unemployment was a bit higher, right, with the pandemic relief that drove some of the shortages that we were seeing in some of the sectors. But we still have a lot of work to do, and it's really pushing companies to reevaluate how they attract candidates and how they treat the candidate during the process.
Definitely. And the expectations, I can tell, as a business owner, as someone who employs, 45 people now, the expectations are different. The talent is coming in slower. We need to step our game up to compete and make offers that are competitive against our competition. And
Absolutely.
one of those things that they're looking for, like you said, is a flexible work schedule. They want to work from home. They want the ability to come and go as they please, and they don't expect to be in the office 5 days a week anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think gone are the days where you could woo people, right, with your free lunches and the nice, the gym on site, and folks really want that flexibility. And so we've seen a lot of organizations shift from, wow, you're really lucky to be interviewing in a final process here, to we're really lucky to have you interviewing. And so I think that's the huge shift that companies are seeing right now, and you have to move fast. We have candidates in the market that have 3 or 4 offers at the same time and are going through processes at lightning speed. I think the standard in the HR community, we call it a 4x4, where you have 4 interviews over 4 weeks. I haven't seen that happen in the last 12 months. I think I've seen offers go out as soon as 2 or 3 days after a second interview that was scheduled 2 or 3 days after the first interview. So it's all about timing to find the right candidate. And there's certain functions, too, that are really seeing a spike in need. So recruiters, for one, a lot of your HR practitioners, a lot of your operations leaders, as well as folks try to navigate getting back into work. And so it's really about being mindful that if you find a candidate that you like, you have to make a move. And sometimes you're going to have to coach on some of those weaknesses. Whereas in the past, you could have afforded to wait a couple of months till someone hit every one of your boxes.
Yeah. And it's obvious what businesses have to do to kind of compete for this lower number of employees. We can increase pay, we can increase benefits, we can increase flexibility. However, this issue kind of came about because of supply and demand. There must be either too many jobs or not enough workers.
Right.
Which do you think it is right now? And why, if so, why is it not enough workers, or why is it too many jobs?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that the Great Resignation has brought along is the ability to make a huge career change, right? You don't have to be in the same role for 30 to 40 years. You could have multiple roles. You could be working gigs. You can take on consulting work and then go full time. So we've seen a huge shift in, one, now everybody's trying to go back to work. So there's a need in certain functions to really boost them to get the roles filled. And then 2, we've seen folks pull away from the career that they may have started out of school and move in a different direction because they've had time to reflect over the past year to see what they really want to be doing with the flexibility. So I think there's just shifts all over the market. It's not one thing or another, but it's certainly a trend that's not going away. And added, we always have slow months, right, in November, December because of the holidays. A lot of folks don't want to make a move. A lot of people are waiting for a bonus payout in the beginning of the year. So you have some added complexity when you're trying to fill roles closer to the end of the year.
Definitely. And also, maybe this is just my suspicion or entrepreneurial intuition, but like yourself, over the pandemic, I feel like there was a massive boom of new companies, businesses that are now starting to grow into maturity. It's been a year, it's been 2 years. They now are looking for more help. And also a lot of the people who were forced to kind of stay at home, maybe were laid off of their job or couldn't go, started freelancing. There's been a massive boom in freelancing. Yep. So lots of companies, lots of people out of the workforce. And I don't know if this is going to change or shift, but it's a little bit scary as the business owner who needs to scale but doesn't have the talent to scale. Yeah. So I'm wondering, what the solutions are. And I guess the solution, as you said, is get more competitive as a company in the offer that you're able to make.
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things that we're seeing folks really focus on. One, sustainability is huge. Individuals want to know when they're going to work, they're working for a company that's not just making a difference in-house, but in their local communities. So that's been a big trend. They want to make sure that the flexibility is there and not just to get them in the door, that that's truly part of the mission, vision, and values. And that they have strong leadership in place, that there's a strong foundational colleague engagement practice in place, so it's not a churn and burn that would have been acceptable months ago, right? And then I think we just have a lot of folks going back to small business, working with the local practitioners. They want someone that will give them that quality experience versus a big name firm where they may get lost. So we're seeing a lot of shift as we're moving through the pandemic.
Absolutely. So now that we've kind of, addressed the issue at hand, this is now where businesses are at. This is what we're dealing with, and I don't see it changing in the near term future. Especially with all the the variants every 6 months. Who knows how long this is going to drag out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've worked with companies that thought they were going back into the office earlier this year. It got pushed to the summer, pushed to the fall. So it's continuous change. And I think we're really learning from an HR perspective to adapt. Every day something new comes out, it seems, from a mandate or return to office or thoughts around that. So it's a really fluid return to workforce right now.
Definitely. I would also love to hear your thoughts on kind of the difference, the productivity, the outlook between having people in the office versus working remote. Have you noticed with employers or with employees a change in productivity, a change in attitude? How has that been going from your point of view?
Yeah, so I think I would say the blanket philosophy, right, is you send folks home, you don't know what they're doing. But I've seen... And
I feel that way.
Yeah,
Instinctively.
And so I've seen the opposite occur. You send folks home and now it's something to watch out for from a work-life balance perspective, but they're more apt to start a little earlier before the kids get up or stay on a little later when the kids go to sleep and really clean things up instead of having that standard 9 to 5. And so I've actually, across the pandemic, seen a boost almost to a point where we've had to tell people, hey, turn off the computer. You don't have to work 24/7.
Okay, good. And as a business owner, how do you feel instinctively? I mean, this is a funny thing because it affects all of us. And I've talked to other entrepreneurs about this. When you can't see somebody working, you automatically kind of assume that they're not. And this is something that we have to battle with and try and change that framework in our heads to go with the data, which the data says a lot of times it's more productivity, not less.
Yeah, and I think what I really love and I've learned to really utilize during the pandemic is collaboration tools. So Teams, Skype, they're not the only things out there. You can whiteboard together. You can jump on collaboration tools that feel like you're in the office. So you're not limited to one platform over another. And I think it's all about learning what's best for your employees. Some employees thrive when they have that biweekly check-in with their leader or a weekly check-in versus having to do daily stand-up calls. And so it's really forced managers to say, what works for me, what works for my team, and how do we get through this together so that everybody still feels connected, so away but together, and we're still getting the work done that we need to get done.
Love that. And you mentioned some tools, and now I want to kind of transition into how do we get talent, what tools do we use, what are some best practices. So with that being said, would love to kind of hear your philosophy, your framework for finding great talent, attracting great talent, what tools you use, and if there are any secrets, taking them from in the door to sign the contract.
Yep, absolutely. So LinkedIn is going to be the one that most businesses are familiar with, right? And so I think it's an amazing networking tool, especially for your higher level roles, right? Once you get into management and above, you're definitely going to want to look at LinkedIn. But one of the things that I've really seen make a resurgence is Indeed. So I know that there's this general philosophy that Indeed is for your lower level roles or frontline roles, but we've had such success finding managers and directors on Indeed that I really think it is worth looking into. Traditional networking isn't dead though. And so it's just changed, right, to online. Your Chamber of Commerce's business events or meetings that are running online now, functional areas that have groups. So, for example, Human Resources has a Society for Human Resources. So I always recommend, if you're looking for a certain role, make sure you're checking out those chapters or organizations. And then diversity job boards. There is such a boom in diversity job boards that businesses can reference. And you can just do a simple search and find a number of them, but one that comes to mind is Out and Equal. It's LGBTQ plus job board. But there are so many across the search that I would really recommend branching out just from LinkedIn, especially if you're looking to continue to diversify the organization.
Definitely. And we use a tool that we've grown to love. It's a little bit expensive, but it makes our recruiting process very easy. I'll mention it at the end here as a little cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a podcast host, and I've heard this, and a business owner, I've heard this term quite a bit. I'm familiar with it. But for a lot of our listeners who may hear you saying that, would love to hear you briefly give your explanation for what that is and why it's important for companies.
Yeah. So when I think about diversity and inclusion, I think about it's everybody. It affects everybody, right? It's not one race or gender or orientation over another. It really is diversity of everybody involved. And it takes on multiple facets, right? Diversity of knowledge, diversity of background, diversity of ethnicity, religion, everything that makes you a person. Teams are better when there's different viewpoints. When you have a room full of the same people, you're going to get the same result consistently, and that's not what's working in this world that is changing day over day. And so it's not about excluding anybody. I know it gets a bad rap every once in a while too. It really is about making the company and the teams as best they can be and bringing that diversity of thought.
Absolutely. So to dig a little deeper into that, why is this important for companies in terms of hiring? What should they do? What should they look for to keep that in mind during their recruiting process?
Yeah, so I always recommend, I know in previous roles we've skewed towards certain schools or certain areas and geographies. That's not what we're looking for anymore, right? We want folks that have different backgrounds, that have had different roles, and it's okay to have gig work or multiple roles as long as the person has a good answer for it, right? And so when you have a team that all looks the same, you're not going to get the representation of the whole of the organization that you have. We found this happen in multiple roles, right? We have, quote unquote, a senior team of all white men, right? So what does your frontline female that wants to be an executive think? And no one looks like me. What am I going to do here? I obviously have to move on. And so you want people that look like you, that talk like you, that think like you, but different and multicultural and multi-diverse in thought to really push the organization forward.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't realize how important that actually is, having them getting diverse seats at the table.
Right.
Because we don't realize how much differently we are, brought up, educated, our day-to-day lives, and how much that impacts our thinking.
Right.
And that translates into the products that you create, the services that you execute, the marketing that you put out. You want all those seats to give their input on all of those things. And that's how a great company and a great diverse company is born. Absolutely. Yeah, so definitely something we keep in mind. And for listeners who employ, definitely this is becoming not only something you should do, but something you need to do if you for the future of your company.
Right.
So we'd love to talk about some ways to. I know we talked about this briefly earlier, but ways to kind of get the most out of our teams, especially virtually. Now that everybody is working, 4 days a week remotely, there's a Zoom meeting. Of course, everyone does that once a day, once a week. But you mentioned some collaboration tools like whiteboards. So what are some of these tricks to keep people engaged, keep our employees happy, and really get the most productivity and highest, attitude and happiness out of everybody?
Right, absolutely. So one, if you're lucky enough in an organization that has an HR business partner team, use your HR business partners. We want to know the business. We want to understand what's going on in your team so we can give you the best advice possible. So I always recommend having them come in, help you or coach you through a skip level meeting so that you're understanding what's going on one level below your direct reports, right? And you have a better picture into the organization. And that can be done virtually. That they used to be done in person. Now we've just move them virtually. I always recommend having one-on-ones with your team on a cadence that works for you and your team member. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every week, but at least biweekly. And the check-in shouldn't be them running down a list of, hey, here's what I got done. There should also be some time for them to ask you questions, get mentored, get coached, understand what they want to do from a development perspective, or use that time to give them feedback. So at the end of the year, they're not surprised when they're hearing feedback for the first time. And then there's always ways to have team events too virtually, just because you're not together, right? Have a happy hour every once in a while, or just write a note, say, I'm thinking about you. How can I help you? What can I do for you? It's really letting folks know you're there, you're accessible, and you're there to coach and guide them and not micromanage.
Yeah, it's funny that you said the virtual events. Our head of HR is responsible for every week coming up with a new game.
Yeah.
And at our meetings on Mondays, we'll do this game. Today's was fun. And this is an idea for other business owners who might want to keep everybody engaged, build some rapport, and bond virtually. Everybody sent in their baby pictures. So we had like 45 different baby pictures that we went through, and we played, guess that baby.
Yep.
So we went through, and it was so much fun trying to see and guess who that baby was who's now on our team. So just little things like that, really is great for morale. It's great for bonding. We got to see the baby pictures, guess. It was a ton of fun. So just an idea for everybody. There's a lot of creative ways to keep everybody engaged.
Absolutely. One of the things we did was What's Behind Me. So about 6 months into being in the pandemic, you started to see folks move around, right? And it's, oh, you have a new background today. So we played a game, What's Behind Me. They took a picture of where they worked virtually and shared it out, included our furry friends and sometimes our children as well. But it was just great to understand the person as a person and not just a colleague.
Yeah, exactly. And I would love to go into another discussion, maybe get some more ideas from you on how to do that, because that's so much fun and so necessary, especially with the long Zoom meetings that people end up on, where it's just people talking, you wait your turn. A lot of times it can even be a waste, but these games are a way to build the morale, make it a little bit more fun.
Absolutely. Keep people engaged.
Yes. So kind of transitioning into actual practice, say smaller business owners, startups, teams of less than 10 might not be in a position to hire an HR company, a recruiter, someone to come run that. They have to start off doing it themselves. I did. A lot of us did when we're first starting out. So what is the best way for them to attract and find talent for an affordable price? What does that practice look like?
So I would say some of the job boards that I mentioned before, right? Indeed, LinkedIn, depending upon the type of role that you want to fill. Some of your more, I would say, frontline individuals, you can utilize some of the other job boards, Monster, Career Builder. Utilize your local networks, right? Your Chamber of Commerce. Generally, if you're a small business, it's a small fee on a yearly basis. You get access to job boards that other people don't. You can advertise there. And not gone are the days where you still hang flyers out in local businesses, right? It's just dependent on the type of role that you want. And so McGroarty and Company specializes in working with small and medium and up to large businesses, but we do help out our small business owners. And so there's always an opportunity for an HR consultant to come in and just help you. Maybe it's on a project, maybe it's just advising for a half an hour or an hour to say, hey, here's what might work for you based on the roles that you have. But it gives you an opportunity to meet with somebody that can help you out. But I always recommend start with your local networks, especially the Chamber of Commerce. They're underutilized, but they have amazing job boards available for the local communities.
Definitely. And just a little 2 cents from me, having done this over the past 3 years, especially when you're starting out and you don't have health insurance, you don't have a 401k to offer, you can't afford massive salaries that some of the top talent might ask for. A good way to entice them, one, is with culture.
Yes.
If it's a fun place and you're reaching into your local network, culture is a huge thing. People want to come work at our office. They see the videos. They want in on the fun. So that's definitely something you should focus on. And then 2 is give them upward mobility.
Absolutely.
As a startup, the opportunity to come in early, sell them on the dream, sell them on your where you see this company going, and then let them know that they're along for the ride. You're not just going to have this role forever. You're going to learn a ton, work directly with the owner, and potentially have a lot of room to grow, elevate, and lead. And that's been very true for our employees, and just a way to kind of attract that talent when you're starting out.
Absolutely. And I would say, too, that it's really tough to attract talent and not have career pathing in mind already, right? A lot of people are coming in hungry and asking the questions, do I have growth in this opportunity? What does that look like? Talk to me about it. Don't just say yes, but what could that look like in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? And so people are asking the questions. And so it's really vital that companies are starting to think about that.
Absolutely. And you're selling them on the position and on the opportunity, because chances are they'll be able to get more money elsewhere. They'll get more benefits elsewhere.
Yes.
So it's really selling them on the dream.
Yeah.
So Alex, that's kind of for startups, for smaller companies.
Yeah.
Now I would love to talk about some of the options for, businesses that can afford to bring in an HR professional, bring in a recruiter. What does that process usually look like for those companies?
Absolutely. So if we're talking the large, right, huge companies, they generally have an in-house team. If we're talking medium, we're starting to get a little large, then I would bring in a consultant. I would do an HR assessment. Talk to me about how many people are in your company. What are you trying to do? What are your goals for this year and next year? And then we can talk about what is a scalable solution for you? How many HR business partners do you need? Do you need an HR business partner? Could you work with an HR generalist or manager, depending upon where you're at? I think there's some complexities about understanding the areas that you operate. Are you multi-state, multi-country? What benefits are you starting to offer? And so it's all about understanding where you're at and where you want to be. And then we can start to put solutions together for here's what today looks like. Here's what next year may look like for you based on your projections.
Awesome. And what are those kind of action items that HR professionals need to look at? As we're growing, things that I never knew existed. And by the way, I don't love this stuff. This is my business partner who handles all of our operations in HR, health insurance, 401ks, contracts. But what I've learned is that it can be a lot, and it
really can.
Yeah. And it's a lot of things that entrepreneurs don't usually focus on right away, because it's not always very sexy. It's not always directly makes you money, but it's something that you're going to have to face at some point in your business journey. So what are some of these things that HR professionals think about in a business?
Sure. Yeah. So I plugged the Chamber of Commerce earlier, and I'm going to plug it again because we joined and we found individuals that handled benefits for small to medium businesses, 401ks, IRAs. And so there's options out there in your network without having to necessarily employ someone in-house if you're just not large enough yet. But what I would say is, one, we hit it on culture, right? You want to have somebody focusing on that, making sure they have a pulse of what's going on. You want to understand the benefits you're offering and have an expert in that, because that can go sideways quickly, right? So whether you're using an external resource, an internal resource, you want to have the right person managing that. I would say if you're large enough or you're starting to scale or you have merger and acquisition activity going on, know a good employment attorney, even if you don't have one in-house. Always a great resource to have. And then recruiters. You can hire a contract recruiter. You can hire an HR consultant to help you out if you have some placements going on, but definitely want to be able to attract the best talent as you're beginning to scale.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I would love to hear a little bit about what you do in your business.
Sure.
What the companies that you service.
Yeah, so we have been blessed to be able to work with Fortune 500 companies to small and medium businesses. We've done retained search, so we come in and help companies that may have a recruiting team that maybe is just a bit overwhelmed or has other priorities at this point in time. We take some of the roles that they're focusing on and we recruit for them. So we only put finalists through to them to interview. It fast tracks the process a bit. We've done coaching, so we can do executive or business coaching, one-on-one or in groups. I do a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion, both teaching and practicing it, as well as looking at the strategy for organizations as they're continuing to build out. And then change management has been huge this past year, and that really has focused around some system upgrades that folks are looking to do during the pandemic, the return to work, and do we go back to work? And if we don't go back to work, how do we stay connected but apart, right? And then just working through all of the challenges that this pandemic has brought. How do we keep folks engaged? How do we make sure they know they have the right resources? How do we continue to grow the business and put the right organization together going forward? And so change management has been huge, and we do that in terms of change management activity as well as change management communications.
Yeah, and who would be kind of a good potential client? Somebody who has a relatively successful business that needs to learn a little bit more about HR and start applying some of these things that we were talking about. or maybe even somebody like, we hired and trained our own HR rep. They have no formal HR training, and it's all kind of learning on the go. So maybe it would be a good opportunity for us to bring you in and train us up. Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
So I would say all of the above plus more. So we've had the opportunity to come in and work with HR teams that are established, but maybe need a boost right into the future, just given the current market. So working to understand, what does the current HR team look like if we have one? Where do they need to be? What skills do they need to know to be successful in this business, and helping them and their operations leaders out. Individuals or companies that need roles placed. So we've placed frontline to executive roles as well. And then companies that are looking to work on strategy long-term or special projects long-term. So I've worked with system implementations for HR. We've worked through change management occurrences. It's really dependent upon, does your current HR department, if it exists, have the bandwidth? And if not, we certainly can come in and help you work through a gig or a contract period of time without having to go and hire an external resource full-time. Okay,
very good. That's helpful. And for anyone who's interested in working with you, where is the best place to contact you? And is there anything that you can offer the audience to go to, a resource or a discount or a consultation?
Yeah, so we are at www.mcgandcompanyconsulting.com. Any one of our listeners here would have 10% off either their first project, or if we do an hourly rate, we can certainly discuss that as well. We're on Instagram at McGroarty and Company, and we're on Facebook as well under the same name. So we hope to see you there.
Awesome. And I'll drop all of those links in the caption here. And if you do have any questions for Alex or myself, feel free to shoot us a DM on Instagram, especially me. I respond to all of the DMs that I receive from listeners. So please go ahead and do that. And Alex, I did want to just give you another thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I know it's valuable. I learned a lot here. I hope the listeners did as well. And this was a lot of fun. I hope we were able to stay connected and hopefully talk about some more HR in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, Mentors Collective. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe, drop a 5-star review, and shoot me a DM on Instagram if you enjoyed this episode, or let me know what you want to hear next. Thank you. See you on the next one.